I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for months now, and I think a lot of you guys are going to relate to this. I'm 24 years old. I make $125,000 as a software engineer in New York City. And before you click away thinking this is some humble brag from a privileged tech bro, just hear me out for a second, because what I'm about to share is going to make you realize how broken things actually are. I worked minimum wage and retail jobs for 10 years to pay my way through community college and university. I graduated with zero debt, zero student loans. I did everything right. Studied computer science, learned to code, got the good job everyone talks about. On paper, I won. I'm living the dream that guidance counselors sell to high school students. But here's what nobody tells you about that dream. My take-home pay after taxes is $79,000 per year. And my girlfriend, she graduated into one of the worst job markets for new graduates in decades. Tech layoffs, they're everywhere. Hiring freezes, company replacing entry-level positions with AI, or the offshoring of entry-level jobs. She's been grinding out hundreds of applications, rewriting her resume over and over, working minimum wage jobs while she waits for something, literally anything in her field to open up. So I'm kind of supporting both of us on that $79,000. In one of the most expensive cities in America. We live with 2 other roommates just to make the math even work. Just think about that for a second. Someone in my position doing everything society told me to do, making what most people would consider really good money, is barely just staying ahead. We're sharing a place with roommates. We're not going on fancy vacations. We're not buying new cars or thinking about buying property even. We're just surviving. Comfortably, sure, but surviving is nonetheless the word for it. If someone in my position is barely keeping ahead, then the traditional American path isn't just hard anymore, it's fundamentally broken for most people my age. But here's what I realized over the years, and this is why I'm making this video. We don't have to keep playing that game that rigged us. We can change the game entirely, and Gen Z might be the first generation positioned to actually do it. Now I know what you're thinking, another video saying work harder or start a side hustle or whatever, but that's not what I'm talking about. This is looking at the actual numbers, understanding what we're actually facing, and making strategic decisions based on reality instead of the stories we've been told about how life is supposed to work. So let me just walk you through what's actually happening to our generation, and then I'll show you the alternative path that I'm personally taking. Here are just the plain numbers and a real plan. And it's kind of why the job market isn't just being tough right now, it's actually systematically broken. Let's start with my girlfriend's experience because her story is way more common than mine right now. She did everything right, got the degree, built the resume, developed the skills, but she graduated right as companies started massive layoffs, right as hiring freezes hit, right as AI started eating at entry-level positions that used to be stepping stones into mid-level careers. Hundreds of applications sent out, constant resume tweaking, rejection after rejection, or even worse, just silence. She's working jobs she's well overqualified for just to pay the bills while she keeps applying, keeps hoping, and keeps grinding. And here's the thing that keeps me angry. This isn't her fault. This isn't a personal failing. This is what happens when an entire generation graduates into a fundamentally changed economy. And there's actual research on this. Graduating into a weak job market creates what economists call a wage penalty that can last to 10 to 15 years. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime earnings just lost just because you happen to graduate in 2025 instead of 2018 or 2019 or even 2020. You're not starting from the same place as people who just a few years before you started from. You're starting well behind them. And that gap actually never fully closes in your lifetime. See, even the National Bureau of Economic Research covers this. The long-term effects of graduating in a recession or recession-like environment has earning losses that eventually do fade, but it takes 8 to 10 years to even just catch up earning-wise with peers that graduated a little bit before you. And again, that gap is still there your entire life. That gap never actually fully closes. See, my girlfriend is living proof of this. She's smart, she's capable, she's willing to work hard, but just because of timing, she's paying for it. And she's not alone. This is the norm for Gen Z graduates right now. Now, I'm not going to be doom and gloom because there is some good things that came out of this. It's forcing us to develop skills that traditional stable employment never actually teaches. It teaches you income diversification, adaptability, self-reliance, learning to create value outside of traditional job structures. These are exactly the skills you need when you're building towards something completely different, when you're planning an exit strategy instead of a traditional path. The job market being terrible is actually training us for independence, even though that's not what it really intends. And I'm not saying it's actually good. I'm saying we can still extract value from a bad situation. And let's talk about college for a second, because this is where the broken system really becomes obvious. College tuition has increased 180% 50% since the early 2000s. And you want to know how much entry-level salaries have increased in the same time? When you adjust for inflation. So yes, when you adjust for inflation, it's actually a grand total of nothing. It has been completely flat adjusted for inflation. And you may be like, oh, I was earning this amount of money back then, and now I'm earning this. That is because you were looking at the nominal change and not the real change in salaries. In addition, you also have to remember you probably bought a house in that time, meaning your cost of living has actually barely increased compared to somebody just graduating, just trying to buy a house. Let that sink in. Education costs way more and basically gets you the same earning power as it did 25 years ago with more student loan debt. Actually, on average, it's about $37,000. And it's not uncommon to see people owing over $100,000 or more in student loans. So yeah, you're paying for the same degree that gets you the same job, except now you're starting tens of thousands of dollars in debt before even earning your first paycheck. And your first paycheck is actually less than what it would have been 25 years ago in terms of inflation. That is objectively the worst and most terrible ROI I've ever heard of. Like, if this was any other investment, everyone would recognize it and be like, that's a scam. Now, there are ways to avoid this trap. You can go to community college, work through school, but most people my age get sold a different story. They go to a good school, get a degree, just a degree because it's the same, and say the job will come. You'll eventually pay that debt off, but except eventually now means a decade or more of payments, and the jobs now aren't even there. And even when they are there, the salaries haven't kept up with the pace of that debt. This is forcing Gen Z to think more critically about education ROI. More people are questioning whether a $200,000 degree or even a $100,000 degree even makes sense anymore, when it leads to the same job, or the same pay at least, as a trade school certification. So now we're routing around the traditional system because we have to. The system is broken, but we're learning to see the alternatives. And that skill, being able to question the system and find alternative paths, that is going to serve us really well. But it doesn't just stop there, because here's something I fully didn't understand until more recently. The American healthcare system isn't designed to keep you healthy, it's designed to keep you employed, actually. The average annual health insurance premium through an employer is now $8,435 for just single coverage. And if you want to cover your family, it's now around $24,000. And that's just the premium. There's also the deductible, which is around $1,700 to $1,800 before insurance even kicks in and starts paying for anything. Medical debt is causing 60% of bankruptcies in the United States. It's the leading cause of bankruptcies in the wealthiest country in the world. And we are actually statistically more unhealthy than we were just decades ago. This is creating an entrapment. And I don't think how people realize how insidious this is. You need employer-sponsored insurance, which means you're locked into jobs even when they're terrible, even when you're miserable, even when you're being underpaid or mistreated, because leaving means paying $500 to $800 a month for marketplace coverage with worse deductibles or gambling with your health entirely. A lot of people can't take those risks. I can't take those risks. I have Crohn's disease. So if I were to leave my job and have no insurance, I'd be screwed. My medication costs $12,000 a month just to manage my symptoms. Now, thankfully, I have good insurance right now to where I don't have to pay that $12,000 a month, but that's how much it costs. People can't take those risks. You can't try starting your own business. You can't take time off to figure out what you actually want to do with your life because you need health insurance. And the only affordable way to get there is to just stay employed. Or obviously, if you're under 26, you can stay under parents, but that's costing them even more money. This isn't just some flawed and a broken system. No, it's entrapment. And again, I'm not just trying to complain. I genuinely want people to see this because once you notice the handcuffs, you start looking for a way out of them. And eventually we'll find that key. And again, it doesn't just stop there. Kids, our population is declining in the United States because having a child is becoming a luxury good nowadays. My girlfriend and I talked about whether we want kids someday. And the honest answer is I genuinely never wanted them, but she did. And I looked into the cost of them and it can go up to $30,000 per year per child. And if you want two kids, you're paying around $60,000 annually in after-tax dollars just for childcare. For many families, one parent has to go to work and the other one has to leave the workforce because their entire salary would just go to childcare costs. But that's not the reality. Both parents are working, both parents are paying for those child costs. And because of that, it's leading to a lot of neglectment. We're having kids being raised by TikTok and iPads, and they're being brain rotted. They are being robbed of their childhood through screens. Parents are being robbed of raising their kids and their child's life because they have to work through their entire childhood just to support them. In the United States, we offer 0 weeks of mandatory paid parental leave. Zero. In the UK, it's 38 weeks. In Japan, it's 32. In Canada, it's 58. We're the only developed country in the entire world that doesn't guarantee any paid leave for a new parent. And that's causing Gen Z to delay having kids or choosing not to have them at all. And just given these circumstances, I'm just sick even just looking at it. We're being told to have families while being given an economic system that makes having a family unaffordable. I've even seen a growing trend of many people wanting to leave the United States just to raise a child somewhere else, like countries like Portugal, Spain, or even most of Europe. They've solved the problem that the US refuses to even acknowledge. I also want to touch on the point of car dependency in America and how it's almost like a $12,000 a year expense. The average car payment in America is now $749 per month for a new car. For used, it's about $539 per month. Now you have to add $200 of insurance, $30 to $40 a week in gas, maintenance at $100, which is honestly undercutting it a lot. You're easily breaking over $1,000 per month just to own a car. And a $12,000 not asset, it's a depreciating asset. And in most US cities, this isn't optional. You need a car to get to work. You need to buy groceries. You need to live your life. The infrastructure doesn't give you a choice around that. Public transit is either non-existent or so unreliable that you can't even depend on it. Biking and or even walking is completely unpractical in many cities because cities are designed around having cars. So you're forced to spend $12,000 every single year on something that loses value, just for the privilege of participating in society. Gen Z is becoming more aware of this, and urban planning really needs to be completely overhauled. Cities should not be designed around spending $12,000 a year on transportation. It should be places where public transit actually works, where you can bike safely, or even where walkability is designed from the start. And that awareness creates demand for it, whether that's planning for better transit in US cities or consider moving to cities abroad where the problem was solved decades ago. Just to stay afloat in the system, 39% of US workers are actually participating in side hustles where there's no benefit, no paid time off, no retirement contributions, no job security, no unemployment insurance if things go wrong. People are just doing it to stay afloat. There's some people working multiple apps like Uber, DoorDash, Fiverr, or whatever, just trying to get enough income to survive with zero stability. A lot of my friends even do this. I've even been doing this, and it kind of sucks because you're forced to always hustle, even though next month's income isn't even guaranteed. One algorithm change or policy change, and you can lose a massive source of income. It is teaching Gen Z how to generate income outside of traditional employment structures, which is awesome. And I honestly do love about that. But what you see online glorifying this hustle culture and this kind of bubble isn't the reality. Yeah, there are people making 10 to 20,000 plus a month, but the reality is that majority of people make like $20 to $30 a month. And these are valuable skills, especially when you're trying to be location independent. I'm not saying the side hustle or gig economy is all that good. It's absolutely a symptom of a terrible labor market with awful protections that's constantly eroding and companies that exploit their workers. But since we're stuck in it, we might as well try to extract some sort of value from it and leverage it to position ourselves in a better situation. You know, it's also pretty funny. Every paycheck, about 6.2% of it goes directly to Social Security. I paid nearly $8,000 a year going into a fund that's projected to deplete by 2034. It's only 9 years away. I'm directly subsidizing the boomers' retirement while we're being told to save up for our own because Social Security won't be there for us. We're being taxed for benefits we won't even receive. I'm not mad at the boomers about this. I'm mad at the system that pretends this is sustainable, while everyone knows that it's really not. It's a glorified pyramid scheme. Now, I'm not just complaining about it. I'm honestly planning that I'm never going to get Social Security. That is just a normal everyday tax. I'm building my own financial independence from scratch, not calculating Social Security inside of this. Now, I just want to pause here for 1 second and be really clear about something. This is not a complaint. I know I make over 6 figures at 24 years old. I'm incredibly fortunate. Most people my age are only making 40 to 50. Last year, I was making $40,000. The year before that, I was making $30,000. So trust me, if you are in a worse situation, you might be older than me, you might be younger than me. I know how it is. My girlfriend knows how it is. She represents what most Gen Z is actually facing. A degree in hand, a terrible job market, working for minimum wage, while constantly applying to jobs in our field. That's the reality. That's what most people our age are experiencing right now. But being in a privileged position gives me the clarity about something really important. If someone making what I make looks at the system and thinks this barely works, then what do people making median wages have? The answer is not much. The traditional path is broken for almost everyone, not just people struggling financially. It's just that people with more money can pretend it's working for longer. And this is where the answer actually really hit me. The answer isn't to just keep grinding against a system designed for a different economy. The answer is to recognize you're playing the wrong game completely. Switch the game if you have to, where you actually have advantages. Here are some alternatives that nobody really talks about. What if we leveraged our time here with the one advantage we actually have? The ability to earn US dollars and move to a country where the cost of living is dramatically lower, but quality of life is equal or even better. I'm talking about countries like Portugal, Vietnam, Thailand, Colombia, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, places where you can live on easily $1,200 per month with everything included. And if you want to be even more frugal or lean than that, $1,500 a month could easily get you a better or the same quality of life than in many US cities. $2,500 a month equals $30,000 a year. Using a 4% safe withdrawal rule, which is the standard for retirement planning, by the way, you only need $750,000 invested to sustain that indefinitely. That's with that net worth constantly growing too. Compare that to the US retirement planning, you need $1 to $2 million saved minimum because the healthcare costs alone are over $300,000 over your lifetime. And that's in addition of car dependency, expensive childcare costs, high cost of living, a higher inflation rate. You're not escaping to a worse situation. It's strategic relocation to a better one. I know this sounds like some backpacker stuff or living in hostels and eating street food and having unreliable internet, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building a real life in a modern country. Portugal has digital nomad visas. Thailand has long-term visa options. Vietnam has modern infrastructure and high-speed internet. Healthcare costs in Thailand are extremely cheap compared to the US. You may not even need expensive health insurance because healthcare is actually affordable there. You have no car because public transportation actually works. There's buses, they have transit. They even have affordable apps like Grab, which is their version of Uber, which is extremely affordable over there, unlike in the US where it's a minimum of like $20 to $30 a ride. Childcare costs are even 70 to 80% less if you really do want kids. Your money overall stretches further. These places have thriving expat communities, quality healthcare, modern amenities, everything you'd want in a major city just at a fraction of the cost. I covered this very in depth in my last video where I went over the real costs, the real situation, and how far $2,500 a month can actually go. And if you have a remote job, you can do this as soon as next year even. This option didn't exist for previous generations. We're the first with both the technology and the economic pressures to actually make it work. That is my exit strategy. And if this approach actually makes sense to you strategically, and I want to emphasize strategically, not emotionally, here's exactly how to position yourself. First, build skills that work remotely. Coding, digital marketing, writing, design, anything that doesn't require a physical presence in the office. The job market is tough, I know that, but remote work opens global opportunities instead of just local ones. Second, optimize your finances right now. No high interest debt. Live well below your means. Invest consistently. I know this sounds boring, but build the foundation while you're young and compounding works in your favor. The difference between 20% versus 50% of your income in your 20s is the difference between retiring at 65 or having the option at 35. Third, I would research countries very seriously, join expat communities online, understand the visa requirements, learn about the cost of living, the cultures, the languages. Make this a concrete plan with steps, not just a daydream. I even try to go as far as talking to people who've even made the move and done this before, understanding what the process is exactly like before I go into it myself. And also I would test before you commit. Take trips, work remotely for a few weeks, see if the plan and the lifestyle actually fits what you want to do and your purpose or your goals in life. That is what my trip is going to be next February. I'm spending 3 weeks in a location, and I know this isn't just perfect validation. 3 weeks is not long enough. I'm going to have to constantly go there. I'm definitely gonna have to make more trips, but the initial one is just the start. I'm not going to move somewhere permanently without actually experiencing what daily life is like there. And finally, invest aggressively. I'm aiming at least 30 to 40% of my income being invested monthly. And it sounds extreme, but when you do the math, it's the difference between financial independence in 15 versus 40 years. The more you can save and invest in your 20s, the more options you have in your 30s and beyond. And this isn't a loser's mentality. We're just playing a different game completely. I hear a lot of older people rip on my idea. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Gen Z is getting priced out of their traditional American lifestyle. That's just factual. The data supports it across every metric I've even shown you. But we don't have to accept the frame that we're losing. We're not losing a game we want to win. We're recognizing that the game itself doesn't make sense anymore and choosing to play a different one completely. We're not trapped by assumptions previous generations had. We don't have to stay in one city for 40 years of our life. We don't have to buy overpriced houses. We don't have to accept the healthcare costs $8,000 per year for insurance. That doesn't even cover anything until you hit a $2,000 deductible. And even then, your claim can still get denied. The traditional path is broken. That's the reality. But reality doesn't have to be limiting if you're willing to think strategically about alternatives that didn't exist generations ago. And in reality, these problems are only worsening. And in 20 years, Gen Z might look back and realize that getting priced out of the old system forced us to build something better than what our parents even had. And no, not because we're special by any means, but because we had no choice except to think differently. I'm making this video and this channel because I want to document my journey to doing this. I want to show what's possible when you question the default path and build something completely different. And I want to connect with people who are thinking about this stuff seriously. I genuinely want to know, what do you think about my approach? Are you seeing similar opportunities? Are you planning on staying in the United States? Are you pushing for systematic change? Or are you just going to create an exit strategy? Both are completely valid, and I know people are going to question both decisions. That's not the point of this. It's to find what strategy works best for you. And if you're working on building location independence, building additional income streams, or exploring geographic arbitrage seriously, join the Discord linked below. We have a few hundred people discussing financial dependence, sharing strategies, and building optionality for ourselves. I'll be posting more updates soon and going over alternative paths so you can achieve this too. This is just my honest documentation of whether this path actually makes sense, and I hope you can get some value or insights from this. And if you did, click that like or subscribe button down below, and I'll see you all